There's proposals to possibly end PSLF, possibly proposals to put caps on loan forgiveness. Man, what a time.
You have no idea. This changes like literally weekly. When your podcast goes live,
this will change.
It might be out of date by then. But anyway, here's the deal with PSLF, right? I would act as though it's going to happen, as if it's going to work, because it does work. Lots and lots and lots and lots of doctors have had $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 forgiven via PSLF. It's in your promissory note. You have a contract with the government for PSLF. I think anybody already in the program is going to be grandfathered into any changes that take place. So I would not panic and bail out of PSLF because people talk about it going away. It has not gone away. Assuming that is your student loan plan, I would stick with it until 100% for sure it's gone.
I got a question for you. It might be rhetorical, but being a doctor, blue collar or white collar?
As a job, what is it? I think it's clearly white collar. I mean, you don't spend a decade learning to do something and training to do something and, 8 years in school and then call it a blue collar job. I think that's a bit of a stretch. I think it's a white collar job. It's a professional job.
Now, let me ask you this. While we may think it's a white collar job, what do you think administrators see us as?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
It's like labor. We are labor for the administrators. There's no doubt about that. And here's what they are maybe hopefully slowly learning. If you treat docs like labor, they start acting like labor.
This is why
that all the time.
I was waiting for you to finish your part, and then Renee jumped in. But I was like, because blue labor, they strike.
Yep, yeah. Blue collar people strike.
They strike, and they want to be paid to be on call because I'm working. Pay me. Whereas doctors maybe 30 years ago were okay being on the ER call list. It was just a duty of being a doctor, and you were on the medical staff, and so you were on the call list. Mm-hmm. And now everybody wants to be paid, and so it means you got gaps in your call list. And
that's right.
And that has effects on patient care for sure.
Absolutely. And the bottom line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Let's jump into a rapid fire question Q&A on you. These are questions that we normally get from everybody. People write into us, text us, or what have you, and it'll be great to get your opinion on it. So I went ahead and kind of just condensed all these different questions into like just one sentence type quotes. Is it too late to get into real estate with interest rates so high?
No. I mean, it's like, is it too late to invest in anything? No, it's not too late to invest. There are better times than others, of course, but sometimes you can only recognize those retrospectively.
Mm-hmm. What's the best state for a doctor to own rental properties?
Impossible to know without a functional crystal ball, right? Because the really important fact.
You did it for 529s?
Yeah, well, it's easier for 529s because I can look at all the relevant stuff, right? But right. I need the appreciation rate for properties in that state, and that's unknown and unknowable.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
I think when they ask that question, I think they wanting to know, like, it's always taxes.
Right.
I think, where's the best place that I can, in essence, do the tax arbitrage and decrease my tax? I think that's always ends up being that's what they want to know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, for the most part, it's a pain in the butt to file taxes in other states. If you're in a tax-free state and then you decide you're going to go invest in a state that charges state income taxes, that kind of stinks, whereas if I'm in Utah, we have state income tax. If I go invest in Florida, I'm not going to have to do a Florida return because there's no income tax in Florida, but I still have to pay Utah state taxes on that income. So it doesn't necessarily get me out of it. So I don't know that the state taxes should drive a lot of decisions other than if you're trying to keep the number of state tax returns you file down. A couple of years ago, I filed in 12 states. That's a pain, right? I'm like, I can't even figure out what states I got to file in. That's what drove me to actually hire a professional for the first time to file my taxes.
Oh, yeah. You've done them always by yourself.
I had always done it by myself till then. I couldn't figure out which states I had to file in.
Yeah.
Is this because of all the speaking fees or
this wasn't a white coat investor at all. This was all real estate. Real estate.
Got
if
you.
they invest in 8 states, and you got to figure out, well, do I have income in that state this year enough that I have to file? And it got really complicated, and I ended up filing in 12 states, and that costs money and hassle. So that's the bigger issue. If you want to avoid that sort of situation, we'll only invest in real estate in states you already have to file in or in tax-free states. or in states where they do a composite return, and they just pay the taxes for you. The investment pays the taxes for you to the state, so you don't have to file a return there. But that can be complicated for sure if you're investing out of state in real estate.
Mm-hmm.
So this next question, I just want to preface it by saying, like, we paid off our debt early. I don't think PSLF was around when we were.
If it was, we didn't know about it.
Right. So
what year did you finish your student loans?
We finished 2017, but we started the process, 2014?
Yeah. So that was the first year that PSLF would have been available to somebody who got into an IDR in 2007, was 2017.
Okay.
You would have had to carry your loans for years to get to your 10-year mark, right?
Right.
So that's the question I want to ask you. If someone came to you and said, like, knowing what's going on with knowing that PSLF has been consistent and it's been paying off people's loans, right, consistently from what we've heard so far, is there any reason for someone who comes with $350,000 of student loan debt out of residency, should they avoid PSLF? Should they just pay it off on their own? Or would you always just recommend going into PSLF? Does it make mathematical sense to do PSLF?
Well, here's the deal. You can't look at that question in isolation, right? Mm-hmm. The question for the graduating resident, person completing their fellowship, taking a job, right? The question is, does your job qualify for PSLF? If it does, you should go for PSLF. If it doesn't qualify, you should refinance your loans and pay them back. It really is that simple. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you can get PSLF, yes, it pencils out. If you can't get PSLF, you might as well pay them back. Now, the next question, of course, the follow-up is, should you deliberately take a job you don't want?
That's what I was going to
get PSLF, right? That's a different
That's
question.
big.
You got to run the numbers. I mean, if this thing's paying you $100,000 less than you'd make at the other job, just so you can get PSLF, that's not going to pencil out. Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, it's like when I was in the military. I left residency in 2006, emergency docs then were making about $225,000 a year. My job in the military paid $120,000. That's what I was making.
Yeah.
Right.
I can pay off a lot of student loans with the difference between $120,000 and $225,000. Mm-hmm. Right? And so if you're not getting similar income at that PSLF providing job, or you don't otherwise like that job for some reason because you want to be an academic or something, that doesn't make sense to take a much worse job just because it gives you PSLF.
Yeah.
But if you want the job anyway and it qualifies for PSLF, shoot, go for PSLF.
Go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, I thought I'd stump you on the blue collar one, but you fought through that one really good.
Well, I think establishing that if you're treated like a blue collar, you'll act like a blue collar.
Yeah.
I think, ultimately it's like, well, I am white collar, but I am acting like a blue collar.
I'm unionized.
It's kind of the question,
right.
Answer. So, yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think we're seeing a lot more doctors striking, residents striking, things that I have to be honest, I just never thought that I would see. But
well, so many more docs are employees now.
Right.
I mean, I don't have the exact statistics in front of me, but it's got to be close to 2/3 of docs now are employees. And it's 50% of dentists, I think now. It's a real issue, and we lose control over our jobs. I think this is a big reason why burnout rates are higher, because we have less control over our jobs. We think that doesn't matter as much when we first come out of residency. 10 years out, I think it matters a lot to have control over your work environment and who you work with and how you get paid and how you divide up the money and all that kind of stuff. I think it matters. And I think we ought to push as much as we can for docs to still own their jobs as much as possible. I think it's good for docs, and I think it's good for patients.
Yeah, I mean, we love doing locums. We really enjoy it. It allows us to have a certain level of control that, in my opinion, we would not have employed. And it allowed us to do certain things, like take certain risks that I just don't think we would be able to take if we were on the other spectrum. Not to say that the other spectrum is bad. It's just that this works for us. And, in some form or fashion, I do think doctors should have some portion of their medical practice either be as an independent contractor in some form or fashion where they are like directly in control, where they're not employed to have to perform that practice and so forth. So, locums is growing bigger and bigger now. I don't know what's going to happen with private practice. I don't know if there's ever going to be a resurgence with that, with the rate at which these hospitals are purchasing private practices and so forth. But that's kind of where we stand on it. Your thoughts on locums?
Will there ever be a time? That's what I want to know.
Yeah.
Do you think there will ever
Is
be
there
a
a tipping
time,
point?
Right, that there will be more locums than not?
Right, because there's always a swing, right? And sometimes that swing could be really like to one complete direction, right? Like, could that happen? I don't know.
Yeah, well, this wild thing happened during the pandemic for nurses in my area, right? All of our local nurses went to work as travel nurses in Idaho, and we got a whole bunch of nurses from Idaho that came down to Utah and worked in our hospitals. And basically the incentives just worked that way. They were getting paid so much more to be a travel nurse that they were doing that. And in a lot of places, that's how locums for physicians has worked out. They've treated the doctors that are there locally so badly that they've left, and they got to bring in locums docs and pay them so much more, or pay so much more, to the locums company and the docs in combination, that they're actually coming out behind if they just treated the docs well in the first place.
Oh man, the turnover at these places. Yeah, I agree with you. Usually if they need locums for any reason, there's always a reason. Right? It's always a reason, right? And you can always say, okay, from a top-down standpoint, you either didn't appreciate someone, you didn't reimburse them in a way that you should, you didn't give them retention the way how they needed, or, like you said, when you bring in a locums nurse or a locums PA or a locums doc, you have the person who's employed and they're doing the same shift, and this person is bringing in 10 times, 20 times more than what you're bringing in.
Absolutely.
That could be frustrating.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
So
yeah,
I don't know that it's usually 10x though. It usually is higher though, especially when you consider that they're also paying your living expenses. They're paying for your apartment, they're paying for your rental car, they're whatever, and so you definitely cost them a lot more than if they just take care of their employees in the first place. Now, there's always going to be some places, some tiny town in Alaska, where they can never get a doctor that wants to live there, that are going to need locums. But way too much locums opportunities are coming up just because of short-sightedness of employers, that they have not treated the doctors they could have had long-term. They haven't treated them well, and so they've lost them, and now they have to hire locums because they have to have somebody in that slot.
Yeah.
Well, do you have anything you wanted to say?
No, I just wanted to say, shout out to Idaho. That's where I did one of my major locums gigs. I was out there for 10 months.
Blackfoot, right?
Blackfoot, Idaho, about 3 hours out from Salt Lake. And I wonder if any of the nurses that I worked with went out there.
Wouldn't surprise me one bit.
Well, to all the young docs listening, or even the med students listening, like I want you guys to take a listen. This is a masterclass on, how to handle your finances while you're in med school, as well as, some of the things that could happen if you're not really paying attention to your finances once you become a resident or once you become an attending. So, Dr. Dahle, is there a way, can you just let people know real quick, what's the best way for people to, I don't know why I'm even saying this, but to even go and find out more about your writings and so forth? Let them know all the ways they can follow up with you, please.
Yeah, I mean, all you got to remember is White Coat Investor, right? I mean, that's what the online communities are called. That's what the social media feeds are called. That's what the YouTube channel is called. That's what the podcast is called, and the blog and the website and the book. And, however you want to, learn this financial information, you do need to learn it. Pick the way that you learn best, and we put this information into that format for you.
Excellent. Jim, thank you so much for coming on Docs Outside the Box. Anybody have any questions, come on, write in, let us know, and we'll shoot Jim a text message or email message and force him to answer so we can get an answer back. So let's know about the blue collar, white collar thing, because I think this is a really interesting debate.
Right, that was
a really interesting debate and stuff. But Jim, thank you very much for your time, man. This was really great. Thank you very much.
It's always a pleasure to be with you.